Spartan upbringing and age, that's how interesting. I'm not trying to figure out this topic in any way, but once I start, a lot of amazing facts immediately begin to come out. Considering Sparta, many people know it as a barrack state, or, as an English historian stated, if the US Marine Corps had a state, it would be Sparta, and so on. Now there are various competitions in the trend to which the word Spartan is added, and there are also systems of physical exercises, Spartan and the like. In addition, Spartan conditions and Spartan upbringing are already common expressions. And here's an interesting point: education in Spartan was called agage, a beautiful word that can be used in conversation. The essence is simple: up to the age of 7, the boys lived in families, but were brought up by special slaves under the constant supervision of even more special government officials. During this time, the children had to get used to a small amount of food, sleep on bare straw in special, uncomfortable cradles, and not be afraid of the dark. The latter was somehow important, but how they were taught this, history is silent. Diapers were not worn on children for about the same reasons that some people now refuse diapers, for harmonious and natural development. And so, after 7 years, really serious trials began. The very agage translates as withdrawal. The children were taken to some mountains, divided into squads with the main boy, and taught to survive under the supervision of mentors, almost like pioneers, but everyone was naked. Unlike the pioneers, the Spartans slept on straw. They were not given enough food, but food could be stolen from Helots. If he got caught doing this quite legitimate occupation, then flogging followed. So it was better not to get caught. By the way, does this remind us of anything from the modern world? In between there were exercises with a spear and a shield. At the age of 12, those who survived were given a red cloak and a sword. Now, during the robbery of Helots, it was possible to kill them, but only on holidays. If someone had asked me, I would have said that such laws are more like another way to collect bribes. But who am I in front of the Spartan sages? These privileges were granted only to citizens. Everyone else could only watch and envy. Sometimes some candidates for citizens were allowed to agage. But here everything was not so unambiguous in 480 BC. Tismen was accepted into the Spartan community and for many years held the post of chief priest diviner in Sparta. It is said that Tismen and his brother were the only ones who could become Spartan citizens. Perhaps the problem with citizenship was also that the Spartans themselves considered themselves exceptional descendants of Hercules, and did not want to see not their own in their ranks, but the story with its secrets as always. The first heroic story: one day the mentor noticed a kid who had a fox under his tunic. Don't even ask how and where he stole the tunic and the fox, but the tie is this. The mentor, apparently a sadist, which is not surprising after we found out how future Spartiates were brought up, began to inquire what the kid had under his tunic. He was silent, and the fox, trying to escape, gnawed the kid's stomach. The kid didn't say anything, went to his straw, and died there. The Spartans were very proud of this brave act, and the kid became a household name. The second instructive story: one day a traveler came to Sparta and started asking for directions to another policy. He had to go further, and Sparta, as you probably guess, was an amateur town, and he clearly did not want to linger. The Spartans looked at the traveler like Muscovites at a newcomer and silently turned away, until one kid suggested the way to the nearest city. The traveler left, and the kid was beaten to death for knowing too much. This kid became a negative hero. It's hard to say which of these is Athenian propaganda and how much truth there is in it. But to be honest, I doubt that this is how soldiers are raised. It's more like a sadomasochistic club with young victims than a military patriotic school. And the Spartan warriors were excellent. It seems to me that in order to fight well, you need to have a lively mind and a breadth of views. They say that Spartiates were taught writing and counting at a minimum, but this is most likely due to the stagnation of society. In Sparta, they probably preferred the good old-rhymed instructive texts on which the citizens' vision of the world was built. Surely these sheets were stupidly memorized, and records are made only by weak minds and the body. By the way, Athens and Sparta accused each other so fiercely and convincingly, in the ancient way, that they succeeded very much in this. Until now, many are being led to this propaganda, although no cross-source confirms any such refined practices either in Athens or in Sparta, on the declared scale, for sure. Who are the Helots, from the Greek literally prisoners, captured? It is believed that these are the inhabitants of Messenia, which was captured by the Spartans during the Messenian Wars. There were 2 of them. They paid half of the harvest to the Spartiates. This is quite a lot. Peasants in the Middle Ages paid tithes to the church, and usually the same number of feudal lords. The Greeks did not like what the Spartans did to Messenia, and they were also disliked for this. A brief history of the First Messenian War 7 to 4 BC. The First War began unpleasantly for the Spartans at the Temple of Artemis, where the Messenians celebrated the Day of Friendship of peoples with the Spartans, or something like that. Both were Dorians. Both were conquerors, and the holiday was in memory of their common roots, different from the local ones. The Spartans say that the Messenians viciously attacked their king and his guards. The Messenians say the same thing, but on the contrary. Nevertheless, everyone agrees that the king of Sparta was cut off in the temple. However, there was no immediate response for several more years. The Spartans were constantly at war, then with the Amicles, then with some other city. And when, finally, the Spartans were released, quite a long time had passed, and it was already a bit late to start clarifying the relationship. And then, from the side of Messenia, Polychar was involved in a showdown with the Spartans. Moreover, he was not just a respected person, but a winner in the running competition at the games of the 4th Olympiad. And, to put it bluntly, he was the injured party. One of the Spartans killed his son. What's even worse, he stole a herd. Polychar, as an exemplary citizen, went to complain to Sparta. With an official complaint, it turned out, as always, about nothing. Then Polychar began to attack the Spartans. And then the Spartans suddenly started talking, "We are civilized people," and demanded the issuance of Polychar from the Messenians. The Messenian king Androcles advised not to annoy the Spartans and give out Polychar, which immediately died from an overabundance of bronze in the body. Moreover, the tsar was killed in the people's assembly, which says a lot about the mood of society in Messenia. In order not to gather twice, the Messenians adopted a resolution right over the corpse of the tsar that the Spartans could write down their claims on a tin sheet, roll them into a tube, and shove them where the gods do not look. But determination alone is not enough to resolve the conflict. Actions were needed. Yes, but the Spartans were the first to act, having occupied the strategic point of Amphia with a night special operation. The Spartans began to raid the Messenians from there and steal their herds. Amphia is a rather small fortress, but it is located near the capital of Messenia. The Messenians also did not sit idly by and tried to straighten out the situation. But to be honest, they clearly lacked cohesion. For 4 years there was a downright feudal war with varying happiness. In the 5th year, a big battle was given. Its outcome was indecisive, but the Messenians were so weakened that they were forced to leave the capital, Sthenocler, and a number of neighboring localities. They retreated to Mount Iphoma, rising on the western bank of the Pamis and separating the upper reaches of its valley from the lower reaches. They are located in the gorges and on the slopes of this mountain. There are archaeological finds confirming the sources, on top of which stood the famous Temple of Zeus. There are fortifications, rather crappy, and there are, like, cult buildings. Leftovers, of course, view from the mountain to the fertile plain attached. The change of position helped the Messenians. Now they confidently repelled all the attacks of the Spartans. But you can't win the war by defense alone. The situation was getting worse little by little. What does an ancient Greek do in any incomprehensible situation? Naturally, he asks what to do with the oracle. The oracle told the Messenians that they would drive away the enemies if they sacrificed a girl from the royal family to the underground gods. Here again, by the way, a little something, immediately a virgin on the altar. But difficult times require difficult decisions, and the Messenians cast lots among the girls of the royal family. The great honor went to the daughter of a certain Lycus, but the priest Epibolus declared that she was not the daughter of Lyciscus, that she was a substituted child. There should be a picture from a Turkish TV series with a face like this is a twist, but I'm too lazy to look for it. And then Aristodemus appears, who was not in the story at all before. But here he is immediately the bravest of the Messenian warriors. Aristodemus is also a man of the royal family, and very noble. He offered his daughter as a sacrifice. Well, if it's necessary for the case. But even here everything is not simple. It turns out that the daughter of Aristodemus has a fiancé, and her fiancé begged to spare her. They didn't listen to him. Then he said, she's pregnant. The young man did not know his father-in-law well. Aristodemus got a little angry and stabbed his daughter on the spot. And then he cut her up to prove her innocence, proved it, but that fucking priest, Epibal, demanded another girl. Like the daughter of Aristodemus somehow unwittingly suffered. It is necessary that everything was according to the rules. The people were worried and wanted to kill the groom. But Euphaios, the king of Messenia, managed to calm the people, assuring them that the death of Aristodemus' daughter was a sacrifice, that the oracle's advice was fulfilled. Persuaded, even convinced, the Messenians, emboldened by this, began to fight bravely. In the 13th year of the First Messenian War, King Euphaios died of wounds he received in the Second Great Battle, in which he, a brave man, went too far ahead of others in the ranks of the enemy. Then the Messenians appointed Aristodemus as king, as a well-deserved patriot and brave man. And Aristodemus justified his hopes, that is, he successfully resisted Sparta for years. Sparta had to make an alliance with Corinth, and together they entered Messenia with a large army in order to end the war that was ruinous for them with a decisive blow. The plan was good, but alas, Aristodemus skillfully positioned his army in a position leaning on the hills, put part of it in an ambush, well-distributed detachments of lightly armed Messenians and Arcadians who were their allies, and inflicted a heavy defeat on the Spartans. The Spartans rolled back, the fighting stopped for a while. Suddenly, a message arrives from the oracle, whom no one even asked about anything victory, and the Messenian fields will be given by the will of the gods to those from whom, before the opponents, 10 dozen tripods will be placed around the altar of Zeus in the temple of Athoma. I suspect that the priests of the oracle just wanted to update their interior, and in general, bronze is an expensive thing. One tripod like 10 cows probably cost, but they underestimated the tightness of the Dorians. No one thought to put bronze lamps. Was the material not specified in the prophecy? So, if you make tripods out of wood, then the technical task from the customer can be met, and you can save on the material. While the Messenians were whittling tripods, one of the Spartans, having learned about this, made 100 small tripods out of clay, and the tripods that the Messenians made of wood were not ready yet, when he disguised himself as a hunter and put his tripods in a hunting bag, sneaked into the temple at night and put the tripods around the altar. Then, as you understand, everything went to pieces and luck turned away from the messengers. Unfavorable omens foreshadowed their imminent death bulls brought to sacrifice, beat the altar with their horns, and so on. Then Aristodemus was also covered. He saw in a dream that his daughter, who had been killed by him, was taking off his armor and throwing a shroud over him. He realized that the gods had condemned him to perdition, and in despair stabbed himself on his daughter's grave. The Spartans and their allies did not miss such an opportunity and besieged the Messenian army. Messenians tried to break through, lost the best. There was famine in their camp, and then they left the camp. Why then not immediately leave, but break through? Pausanias does not clarify. The people of nobles scattered to their homeland, the nobles retired. To Arcadia, Argos, Sicyon, Eleusis some boarded ships and found shelter in the city of Regia, on the coast of Italy near the Sicilian Strait. At the end of the First Messenian War, the Spartans destroyed the houses, towers, and walls of Ipoma so that everything there turned into ruins, and enslaved the remaining population in Messenia. The remains of the ruins of Ifoma are still visible today. After the war, the Messenians had to give the Spartans half of what they collect from the fields, and at the death of the Spartan king, they wore mourning clothes like periques and helots apparently. It is implied that part became perishki and part helots. Well, one more important thing, from the loot taken in Messenia. The Spartans brought copper tripods as a gift to Apollo of Amicles. Yes, the Spartans worshipped Apollo. This is their supreme god. From these and similar, frankly speaking, semi-mythical sources, it is known that during the First Messenian War there were many troubles in Sparta. The kings Polychar slaughtered immediately after the war and Theopomp ruled at this time. Along the way, they made a coup, increasing the rights of the tsarist government and reducing the powers of the People's Assembly Apelles. The Spartan kings and Gerousia were granted the right to act against the decrees of the People's Assembly at their own will. But after a while it was cancelled. It seems that ephors were invented at the same time. In short, it was then that Sparta, as never before, began to be corrupted by democratic aspiration. There were other disputes. It is since the First Messenian War that two classes of Spartan citizens have appeared: full-fledged citizens hemoi and incomplete citizens hypomiones, and a new class of newly conquered settlers, neodamids. Appears they are not periques, but not helots either. From this, we see that the former political and agrarian institutions have undergone important changes, but we see only by unclear data. Perhaps the decrease in the number of citizens from mortality in the First Messenian War forced the Spartans to replenish their ranks by accepting a certain number of periques into the citizens' estate, and to replenish the number of periques with helots. But not all rights were given to those transferred from the lower estate to the higher, and it is possible that some of the Dorian citizens were deprived of some rights for not fulfilling their military duties. Nothing is clear, so we won't get into it. Just note that the Spartans are still so far from the barracks ordering. 20 years of grueling war gave Sparta 3500 plots for new citizens, but not enough for everyone. After the First Messenian War, there were many discontented and impoverished citizens. Their leader was a certain phalanx. These Bezoters planned to revolt during the Feast of Iachin Phi, to claim land plots and equality with the homoi. The conspiracy was uncovered, but apparently public discontent gripped many people. So, despite the Spartan severity, almost no one was killed at the phalanx, and his companions were ordered, by the advice of the Oracle of Delphi, to go to the fertile land of the Iapygs and found a city there. They were provided with abundant supplies if they were ill there. They were granted the right to return to the Peloponnese and receive a fifth of the conquered Messenian land. They founded the colony of Tarentum in Iapygia 708 BC. A later and fabulous legend calls these immigrants Parthenia's sons of girls and epivnex adopted from lovers, and says that they were born during the war by Spartan women and girls from ties with the helots, or from young, strong Spartans given to them as lovers by the government, which wanted to increase the number of children of citizens.